guys, Ironclad Originals launched a couple years ago. John was always on our short list of kicking things off. This has been the project that we've been looking to do for a while. This is Dave Ramsey meets John Rambo, where you get to call in and get answers to the most dangerous questions that you have.
The information in this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes. Our informational content cannot address all dangerous situations and cannot guarantee your survival or prevent injuries when the unexpected happens. The decision to carry a firearm, either for recreation or for personal defense, carries the risk and potential for injury and/or death. Therefore, it is advised that you seek out and acquire proper training before using a firearm or any firearm-related product.
What are some self-defense techniques?
What would happen if there was a global internet outage?
What should I do if I hear shots ringing out?
Or what I should do if there's a major terrorist attack?
What should I have? What's the best?
What should I do?
What does that look like?
What would you recommend? Is there anything I could do?
All right, guys, welcome to Dangerous Questions, an Ironclad original. So right away, we've got a question coming in, which is pretty heavy. And I think a lot of people are going to relate to this, especially in today's modern culture. And I want to get into it right away. So let's see what she has to say.
After the events on October 7th, where Hamas entered civilians' homes and murdered Israeli citizens, what could I do if I had to barricade myself in my home in that kind of a situation? Okay, so the ultimate question was, if there was an outside threat, which, you know, if we're talking about Hamas and terrorism in the world, we're talking about a serious threat that's imminent, it's right away, it's aggressive, and it's at our doorstep. And she's asking about what can she do to barricade herself. Obviously, first and foremost, guys, we're always going to default to knowing that we can fight through any situation, having the willingness to fight to the death if necessary, right? That's the mindset that we need to bring to bear every single time we confront a situation, because I've said this before, and I talk about it when I'm teaching mindset, when I'm teaching tactics. I would go to a target and I'd be on a helo and I'd be thinking of all the scenarios that could happen. What if this happens? What if this, guy comes through this door? What if I enter this way? Worst environment imaginable, right? The scariest place ever. And I want to think about how I'm going to respond to each one of these things. Well, I knew that whatever it took, I would claw my way to whatever was going on to my last breath. Like if I could still move and pull my trigger, I was going to come after you. And that was the intensity that I needed in my heart and in my mind in order to finish the mission. So I want everybody that's thinking about these scenarios to first get right with how they get to that point. And it might take a while. It might mean that you have to work on your mindset, work on your training, work on your visualization, go get more advanced training, find out how to use firearms. But if you're in a situation where it's overseas, you don't have anything else, you're in the situation where you're in a room and all of a sudden it goes down right outside of the door. What are you going to do? Well, again, you still have to be willing to fight to the death. But what are some simple things that you can do? And she used the word barricade. And maybe that's something you try to do. Maybe you build up the door so it makes it tough to get in and they just hit that door and they go to the next one. They're going to the path of least resistance. They're going to the easiest target. And a lot of times when the guys are hitting building to building or even in open spaces, that's exactly what they're doing. So you want to make yourself a hard target. If we have control of that space, we should know that environment better than anybody else that's going to walk in there. So is there another out? We talk about it in the malls all the time. There's interconnecting rooms. When you go back into those back rooms to each store, they interconnect to the other store. They interconnect to back rooms. A lot of people don't know that. They stop at the store. They just stop in the hallway. But there's always another layer. Know your environment. As soon as you go to a new place, even if it's a hotel overseas, a room, a place you're staying, even if it's very quick, when I go to a restaurant, I typically, if I know I'm going to be there for a while, especially all night and I'm meeting people, I typically go back to the kitchen and try to see what's going on. Even if I open the door to the kitchen, like what's somebody going to do? Just give me a hard time and tell me I don't belong there? Well, at least I got eyes on now. I see exactly where the exit is. It probably leads out to the dumpster. There's 2 outs. Well, I got a visual now. If I need to move or break contact or go somewhere safer with more cover, I have the ability to do that. My point, know your environment. That's going to help you use it to the best of your ability. Barricading yourself, well, if I don't go in and look and see I've got a wooden table with metal on it. That's a pretty good solid obstacle that I can put in front of a door. I've got chairs all over the place. I've got wooden chests here. I've got another stool. All these things can be used to my advantage, ultimately to stop somebody from coming in. It's at least going to slow them down. If I can get that door tough to open and they start coming through with their gun, well, there might be an opportunity to grab it and use it to my advantage. So things to think about, no matter where you're going, know your environment, assess the situation, and that's going to give you at least an advantage in wherever you go. So great question. And again, I can dig into that a lot, but let's get to the next one. Dangerous Questions is proudly presented by Staccato. I don't know about you guys, but when it comes to firearms, precision and craftsmanship are extremely important to me. And these guys are hitting the nail on the head. They're setting the bar high. I know every detail of their firearms are really on point. So if you haven't already, go check them out. They make the 2011 pistol, which is in its A game. And you can go to staccato2011.com/dangerous. And by the way, they actually have ammo that matches the precision of their guns with the option to get a subscription. I don't know about you guys. I've been bit by subscriptions in the past, but I would not be upset for having more ammo showing up on my doorstep. So something to check out, and you can get free shipping by using the code DANGEROUS. Let's go.
I want to create some go bags for my family. I have a wife and 2 kids. I have some family that's got some land that's, a couple of states away, but they're largely off grid. What should I have in my go bags?
So go bags is a common phrase that we think about when we want to be prepared, right? What do I need in my bag if I'm going somewhere? He mentioned getting off the grid. He mentioned going somewhere else. Well, if that's your actual plan, that you have a spot off the grid or you have a location that you're going to meet up with somebody or a rally point, okay, great. Well, what's the context of the situation that's going on? What do I need? I mean, if we break it down, there are some basic things that we need to consider when we're thinking about a go bag. A go bag can mean everything from medical to firearms to sustainability to food. If I'm thinking about going to the next state and it's a quick transit and I'm only going to be in the car for 3 hours, I'm not necessarily thinking that I need a lot of food. I'm not sitting there packing out a bunch of water and food. Of course, water is something that you're always going to have to utilize and need. But I'm thinking to myself, if something's going down where it's that significant, I need to move, I've got to have some type of medical equipment. I have to have some type of ammo and firearm with me. I mean, if I tell anybody, if you have ammo, you can get yourself through a lot of situations. You're prepared to handle these situations because if it's that life-threatening where you're worried about something going on, you can defend yourself, or if need be, you can utilize that ammo in ways that are going to be advantageous. And I won't go into detail with what that means, but to think about your go bag and to really structure it in a way that's going to set you up for that context. So if you have a goal, if you have a destination, that's going to help you out a little bit. What's your timeline to get there? The other thing too is essentially thinking that I'm going somewhere. Well, it might just be to stay put where you are. It might just be that something happened locally. I mean, I've had situations here locally. We had an earthquake that was very, very mild, but it shut down everything. The grid got shut down. People couldn't call out. You couldn't talk to anybody. You didn't know where you were going. So if you didn't have any type of plan, you really weren't going anywhere. You were just trying to make sure the people that you sent off to school or your loved one that's at work was okay. You spent 12 hours just trying to figure that out. Never mind go somewhere else. So do you have what you need in your vehicle or in your home that's going to last you a few days? And what I'm talking about is the right medical equipment, the right firearms, the right water, the right supplies that you might need. Signaling devices, that's another one people don't think about very often. But without getting too deep into what actually goes in the go bag, just thinking about how you're utilizing it and where you're going is going to help create that context. So hopefully that prepares you that if you are going to that place off the grid, you're thinking about the specific things you need to get from A to B and be able to sustain at least for that time frame. So another great question. We'll go into go bags further in detail later. All right, so the next one is a written question. The NSW community and special operations community are frequently described as brotherhoods. Why does it seem like there's so much drama between guys after they get out and start pursuing new ventures? I mean, on the surface to me, it is interesting how this has become a mainstream topic and really doesn't get addressed at all.
And the truth is that we do leave a brotherhood. There is a brotherhood that we're a part of. And I think a lot of guys, when they're in that transition period, they navigate through, what was I just a part of? What did I just do? It's so fast paced and so intense that a lot of times you end up reflecting on what's going on. And I'll be honest that when you leave, it's kind of like getting off the train. The train is going to keep moving. The machine is going to keep going. And I was so engaged when I was on deployments and when I had stuff going on. When you thought about somebody leaving and you thought about somebody getting out, it was almost unfathomable at one point to think about leaving the military. So when I thought about getting out, or when you think about a guy leaving, it's almost like you can't even have the emotional capacity to think about that person after the fact. And you have your close buddies and maybe 2 or 3 guys that you're really, really tight with, that if that person was leaving, it might be different. But the average guy that you were working with, that's kind of 3 or 4, people removed from your tight-knit circle, that guy's gone emotionally. You're like, look, I don't know what that guy has going on. We're so invested in making sure that we're protecting our own lives on target, and our life is so fast-paced, it's hard to really connect that way. And that's something probably people don't think about necessarily. And then you have the aspect of all of the elements and all of the different types of lives that guys are living after the fact. You got guys going out, pursuing finance. You have guys going out building training companies. You have a very, very diverse group of guys that were working at a high level to go figure this out. And to be honest with you, it does bother me in some cases where guys cause drama outside, because a lot of people don't understand the dynamic of being in. And I don't expect everybody to either. And there's a certain part of that I like to honor and respect and kind of keep where it was. That way, with what people don't understand, they're not trying to overanalyze something that might not make sense to them right away on the surface. And because it is becoming a mainstream topic, I think it's important for anybody listening to this, whether you're a team guy or anybody else, to respect the element of, what guys are doing. Guys are all trying to figure it out. Guys are trying to pursue careers. I try to respect and help everybody that I possibly can that came from that old brotherhood so they can get on a path. It is difficult to figure out, how the heck do I use these skills that I was hunting bad guys my whole career? Now I got to go figure out how to take care of my family. That is not an easy thing. Anybody in the military struggles with that. So I try to respect the idea, the fact that some guys might struggle. Some guys might have a different viewpoint. Some guys might have a different way of looking at things. And I have to at least respect that on the surface, and at least respect and honor what they're up to until they figure it out, And I think the best thing we can do as brothers is figure that out for each other, help each other get to that next spot. I would say the last part about that is, I think guys get very protective. I think the human nature does, anybody in general. It's just to the level it's been exposed. We have the blessing and the curse of having been involved with so many high-level missions, which put us under a spotlight that really we didn't ask for. And there's a lot of advantages to that. Like this episode and like these shows, is that we get to interact with the experience that I had and make your life better and prepare you for things. But at the same time, sometimes there's exposure where it's really not necessary. And I think that those things just need to be respected from that viewpoint, and then we can all get better from it. We can all move on and lift each other up and not put each other down in a way that rises all ships with the tide. So it's a great question, and there's a lot more to it. There's specific nuances to each scenario, and maybe somebody will ask a question about that, and then we can break one of those down. But I think from the surface, it's just building each other up really is what I try to do. That was a great question. Let's see what we have next. All right, guys, this segment of Dangerous Questions is brought to you by Mountain Tough. You guys know how important physical fitness is to me. Every single day, no excuses, getting after it. Mountain Tough Plus is a fitness app that's trusted by the dedicated. And I'm talking about guys that are in the military, law enforcement. This app is awesome. It's laid out really well. These guys are putting a lot of effort into it. If you're looking for something and you're on the move and you're traveling that you want at your fingertips, these guys are putting a ton of content on there, and it's all access. You guys can use the code DANGEROUS to add 4 weeks to an already 2-week trial, giving you 6 total weeks to test this thing out. Give it a test run and apply it to your life. You'll have something right at your fingertips on your phone every single day. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm curious what to do in a similar situation to what happened to the workers in Baltimore when the vehicle they were in went off the bridge and into the water. Is there a way to survive that kind of situation?
All right, so the question was, what happens when your vehicle goes into the water? We had this situation in Baltimore, and obviously this is a situation that you're not expecting. Everybody watched the footage at this point. It's like, oh my God, this is happening right in front of us. And some of these guys are in their vehicle. Well, what does happen when your vehicle, enters the water or a dynamic situation? Even from a standpoint of getting in an accident, you have to understand that you're going to have a very dynamic movement. Things are going to be upside down and backwards. And just like medical, just like anything else that we do from a tactical perspective, we want to win the fight, right? If you felt your car all of a sudden going to free fall, or you have a blowout on the highway, or you fall asleep at the wheel, and next thing you know, you're tumbling over, you have to win that fight first. And really, in some cases, you're holding on for dear life in whatever way that you possibly can, whether it's the wheel or mitigating trauma to your head. I mean, I've been in some car accidents where I'm literally holding my head so I'm not getting my head banged against the metal frame. And you are trying to win that specific fight. But without going into further detail, let's talk about what happens when your car hits the water. There's a lot of myths out there. There's a lot of things that people think they're going to do. Like, oh, I'm just going to break the window. Like, are you really sure about that? Have you actually tried? There's guys that have gone out to a junkyard and say, you know what, we're going to test this. And they try to hit it with their arm and, break it with their knuckles or grab something in the car, even the butt of a blade. If I think that the backside of my blade is going to do it, that might not work. Now, I can almost guarantee you that you could put some positive pressure with the point and get something to happen with the side windows. And that's a great tool to have. Glass breaker, even better. But the immediate part that you hit the water, I want to break that down for a second, because a lot of people think they're just going to wait for the car to fill up. And you're losing valuable seconds in that scenario, where if you get enough pressure around the car, you're not going to be able to open that door up for sure. And then the window, you're just building up all that pressure even more, where that water's going to come flooding in as opposed to pre-breaking it. And there's a couple ways to look at that as well. One is it's easy to think about, what would I do when I'm on my own? Well, if I'm on my own, let's start there. And maybe the guy that asked the question's on his own. As soon as the car hits the water, I'm going to try to get that window down, because it slows the process of that traumatic water coming in, and it just allows it to kind of flood in slowly, and it gives you an out. It gives you a clear view of where I'm going to go. As I'm trying to win the fight, again, I'm going to preempt this and also bring up a point that I should have already, is I'm already starting my breathing workups. I'm already starting that diaphragmatic breathing to try to slow my heart rate down, to use less oxygen. That way I can be effective. I can think clearly about what's going on. I can have a lower heart rate, so I'm utilizing that oxygen to the best of my ability if the event happens where I need to hold my breath. But then we fast forward back to breaking that window or getting the window down. I'm going to try to roll the window down if the electric is still on. If the electric goes out, okay, so be it. I want to get it down as much as I can. Break it right away. That's going to give you an out so that water slowly starts to flood in a direction that's predictable. So you know you're going to go out that way. You start seeing the car fill up. At the same time, I want to unsecure myself. I want to free myself of anything that's holding on to me. So easy to think about. Yes, if you have a seatbelt cutter, that's all nice to think about too. But I'm thinking about referencing my seatbelt, and I've talked about this in a place where I would draw my gun too. But I want to reference my seatbelt and trace it all the way down till I get to the buckle. That's going to be important for a couple of reasons. What happens if it's at night? And what happens if the car is upside down and backwards? And most likely it will. Some of the testing that's been done out there, the car most of the time actually flips on its back. So if you think you're already, discombobulated with where the window is going to be, plan on it being even worse. So you really have to know what's going on with your seatbelt and where the window is. So if you're upside down and you're feeling pressure, I always say, take the problem point, right? If I'm leaning, if the car is sideways and I have pressure on my ribs, I'm going to think about grabbing where the pressure is, finding the seatbelt, which is somewhere around your neck, trace it all the way back down, just like in diving when we're looking for our hose and we're trying to trace it out to get that air supply. I want to get that mechanism down and release it. That's going to allow me to be free and clear to give me that straight path to the window. These are critical things that we're thinking about. Now, from a standpoint of being with children, right? My wife and I have 5 children. If we're in the minivan and everybody's strapped in and I have a 2-year-old in the middle seat, everything just changed, everything. I mean, if you think about, you couldn't contrast the situation enough because it doesn't just become about me anymore. And in that context, I think some people would probably argue this, but I'm not going to break anything if it's not already broken to allow that water to come in as slow as possible. Even if the car is sinking, I have to get everybody unbuckled. There is no other way for me. So if I think I'm going to break the glass and then go in the back seat, well, now the car is flooding and I've got at least 3 kids to really work through in hopes that my older 2 can take responsibility and become an asset in that situation. But I'm going to allow things to slow down as much as possible. My belt's getting released and I'm going immediately from youngest to oldest to try to get them out as quick as I can. And that's a context-driven thing too. From that scenario, I might immediately enlist the help of my oldest child. If he's with it and he's conscious and I'm looking at him and I'm like, I need your help right now. Can you help me? Yes, Dad, I can. Okay, get your buckle off. Get Aurora out of the seatbelt now. And I see him clearly moving with a clear path. That might reduce my time on target to help me and then keep giving him clear direction. Again, keeping everybody calm. It's going to be okay. The one scenario that I think I find very interesting from a water perspective is that if the car does flip upside down or in an unpredictable direction, you have to think about what's happening inside of the vehicle. Your water bubble or your air bubble is actually shifting around on you. So you could be in a scenario where you go in, I've got a clear breath and okay, I could stay pretty calm. I get my buckle up, but all of a sudden we start tipping now and your air bubble's on that side of the car and everybody else is locked into the seat. I mean, this is the worst case scenario, guys, but at the end of the day, if you don't visualize this, you're going to be less likely to take the proper action. And I'm trying to arm you guys. I'm trying to arm you with who answered the question with the right knowledge. And you've got to be able to go through this. Even if you were doing it in a dry scenario, like, hey, babe, let's walk through this. Let's make sure we're squared away on this, but let's make sure the glass breaker or whatever you plan on using to break the window is at an anchored spot in the car. So when it does flip, you're going to be able to go and find it right away. Make sure those parameters are in place. This stuff can save your life. Now, visualizing that and running through it and knowing that you can do it under stress, knowing that you can keep yourself calm, you're the one. If you're watching this video, you're the asset that's going to have to step up. You're the one that's going to be called upon to save the lives of your children and your loved ones. So think about how you're staging this stuff and what's going on. But my main point, do you break the glass or not? It's really going to be who's in the seat behind you and who are you responsible for to be able to take care of their lives. You have to make that decision depending on how fast the car is going in and really what's going on with the vehicle. Is it upside down or what's going on there? But those are some critical tips I think you guys can apply. Do more research. Find more that's out there, but those are your basic knowledge that'll at least help you in that situation where you are submerged underwater. All right, guys, on to my favorite part where we get to break down real world scenarios. And let's see what this first one is. All right, so we got a guy with a long gun. Clearly, the gun is loaded and ready to go, which he put rounds in the wall there, which was a clear confirmation like, okay, this guy's serious. Now you've got a little bit of a struggle here. Guys come out to help him. And now they're outside. Okay. And hopefully in this position, they're putting him in a position where they can take control of that firearm. So let's go back to the beginning. This is a really good scenario to break down. And there's a lot going on here. And I'm going to focus on a couple of key things. First is we do weapon takeaways all the time, right? We talk about if we have a firearm, distance is our friend, bullets travel far. If I'm in arm's length distance or if I'm trying to take a gun away, well, I want to be able to close that gap somehow, some way, or maybe they close the gap. So he's starting to do the job for us. Now, when he puts rounds in the wall, it lets you know that he's not messing around. He's there to do something very serious or take a life. In fact, this guy responds, I mean, probably how a lot of people would. I mean, he really flinches. His flinch response kicks in and he tries to get away from that danger. Well, what's interesting about where the gun is oriented is it's still away. So there's something psychologically that he's thinking about from a perspective of like, okay, I just fired this thing into the wall and he's still holding it there. That guy flinches, but once he realizes he has nowhere to go, because he clearly does try to get out and get away from this thing,
he realizes that he's fighting for his life. And that's where you have to make the decision. Am I fighting or am I breaking contact here? And he does the right thing because he closes the distance. He tries to get away twice, tries to go through the door, then he tries to hop over the counter. He's like, that didn't work. So the only option left is to fight. Thankfully, that guy's gun was still oriented in a position where he could close the gap. If we think about the laser concept, which I talk about all the time in my combatives courses, that laser concept is that wherever that laser is pointed is bad, right? It can cut off an arm. I can die if I get in front of that laser. If it's pointed away from you, you're not in any danger at that point. So he clearly identifies that and then closes that gap on the gun. And then from there, it's really the three principles in ours is clear your body of the line of attack, control the firearm, and then crush the guy. So clear, control, and crush, which he pretty much clears, and he is cleared because it's pointed away from him, but he closes the gap to be able to crush this guy and control the gun. So you see the control start to happen. His hand comes on the weapon. He controls the guy. And with a long gun, honestly, at this point, once you're in arm's length distance, it's actually really easy to keep the barrel pointed away from you. My biggest thing at this point now is where is everybody else, right? And this is where training and experience comes into play because look right there. That's starting to point back where whatever it was, the cash register or somebody behind the counter, there's all those guys coming out the door. That's close to those dudes in their head. And even when they dump outside, so if you fast forward this, let these guys dump outside real quick, you're going to see real fast that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just from what I can see, and then there's a car driving, 5, 6 people, 7 people, 8 people. There's at least 10 people around that area that could potentially be swept by this gun. So it's not just you that you're fighting for. And again, that's where you start opening up that OODA loop, that observe, orient, decide, and act. Your awareness rings. All those things start to become a factor. If I'm with my kids, that thing is getting controlled away from everybody that's in that environment, including my family. So things to think about in this situation. The 2 key factors I want you guys to take away from this video are, when are you going to decide to do something about this? Your training and experiences is going to allow you to know when to crash that gap. This guy doesn't look like he's got much experience at all, or else he probably would have crashed the gap right away as soon as the gun was oriented away from him, figuring out what's going on. But you've got to understand that timing. If they came there for a reason. And so if they're pointing the gun at you like this, it's probably not a good time to use that tactic. And I'm not going to get into the tactics here because it does take a high level of training and repetition to be able to get good at this. I'm going to start doing counter weapon modules with what the training I put out online. But right now, go to a reputable person. You know, there's guys out there, Kelly McCann, Tony Blaro. There's guys that are already putting great information out there that you can take away good reps, and you get on the mat, get the gun in your hand. You got to do this stuff. The second key thing here is once he decided to fight and crash that gap, it was all about controlling that firearm. People with little to no experience can do this with the right instinct. You know, you gotta trust yourself enough to be able to crash that gap. The worst thing you could do is stand there and just get mowed over by this guy and decide to do nothing, especially if you got other buddies starting to pour out back from that room. Now you've got strength in numbers. You can control this guy, get him in a position where you can control this fight and make him a non-threat. But this is a really great video to watch over and over again. And there's a lot of points to this, but I wanted to focus on those 2 key things because could somebody come waving a gun around in your environment? Of course. If you think you're going to take it away from them, get the right training, trust your instincts in that environment, and ultimately be aware of what's going on. That guy couldn't go anywhere. Could he have seen this guy coming in a little bit earlier? I don't know. Again, we didn't know the pre-context, but things to consider for situations like that.
Hey guys, what's up? This segment of Dangerous Questions is brought to you by SNAKESTAFF Systems. If you guys have heard me talk about them before, they make low profile tourniquets, and I always say there's no excuse not to have a tourniquet on you, and these guys nailed it with being able to have something on you at all times. Go check them out at snakestaffsystems.com. No excuses.
All right, we get to break down one more scenario in this episode. Let's see what it is. All right, clearly we're in a gym setting. That girl just let this guy in, okay, a little odd. He's in flip-flops with his arms crossed.
Okay, she pops back up on the camera. Great use of environment, right? And when you're in your environment, you should know it better than anybody. Okay, she's obviously just got taken down. And again, we're now in a jiu-jitsu scenario, right? This is where Brazilian jiu-jitsu comes into play. And again, I talk about BJJ all the time. I mean, you really can't learn enough of it. It's human chess. You got a larger opponent on top of you. That's where this is really, you're going to be able to use your leverage to your advantage. But it looks like she did everything she could from a perspective of fighting. She chose to fight. She chose to fight back, which ultimately makes it a struggle for this guy. Criminals want easy targets. People don't want to get caught and they don't want to get hurt. Those are the three things that criminals really care about. They don't want to get caught, they don't want to get hurt, and they want it to be over quickly. So if you make that difficult for them, they're going to have a harder time fighting. And again, this comes into a scenario perspective too. Like this guy was coming in and she didn't really have anything pinging on our radar. Could she have? I don't know. I can't answer that question because I wasn't there. But something doesn't seem right about that approach. And this is where knowing your environment is really going to set you up for success, because she uses the bench. Could she have used other things as improvised weapons? I mean, you've got dumbbells in there. You've got weights. If you work in a gym, you should already know where your weapons are. If you work in an environment, you should already know where your weapons are. And you want to be able to utilize those to the best of your ability. My favorite part about this video, guys, is that she kept fighting. She didn't stop. And I think there's a part of it where she's still trying to access her phone. Again, this is where your decision-making has to come into play. If that phone's not doing you any good, it might be a distraction. You trying to dial 911, or at least know that if you double tap that button on the side, it sends that alert out. Everybody hits that thing so much, I'm not even sure how serious they take that anymore. But it is a feature that you should know how to use. I mean, if you come disconnect with your phone and you had the opportunity to multiple press that lock button, that's going to send out an alert, at least to somebody that a distress signal has been sent. Then ditch your phone and put it back in your pocket and get in the fight. Don't fixate on your phone to the point where it's taken away or leaving you vulnerable to get hit in the face or let them get a shot in. You've got to stay engaged. The will to fight, the willingness to engage no matter the circumstances. If something like this happens and it's a fight for your life, you're doing everything that you possibly can. You're ripping and clawing their eyes out. You're scratching and biting and headbutting and elbowing and doing whatever you possibly can to get out of that scenario. Again, what's the alternative? Every scenario is going to be different, but don't not make the decision that you're going to fight for your life and with everything that you can, so that, like this girl, you can outfight this guy and break contact and get to safety. Again, ultimately, I'm always going to tell you to train as much as you can. Muay Thai, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, these are all really great things, especially for women to be able to use leverage to their advantage and get out of these scenarios alive. All right, guys, again, thank you for watching Dangerous Questions, an Ironclad original. I'm having so much fun doing these episodes. This is literally my favorite stuff to do, is break this stuff down with you guys. Keep sending the questions in. Check the notes below. Keep contacting us and keep sending comments out there, because it's helping us get this data. And if you have a question to ask, there's no doubt that somebody else has a question to ask too, and it's probably the same one that you're thinking of too. So make sure you send them in. God bless everybody, and we'll see you on the next one.
So we've known Dom for over a decade now. As he was transitioning out, we were just getting fired up with Ironclad. We've done a ton of projects together. We just have always had a great working relationship. So as Ironclad Originals launched a couple years ago, Dom was always on our short list of kicking things off. We did a couple special episodes of Danger Close together, and we've done some other things in the Originals atmosphere, but this has been the project that we've been looking to do for a while. This is Dave Ramsey meets John Rambo, where you get to call in and get answers to the most dangerous questions that you have. So anytime you launch a show, you always know what you think you want and your way that you think it's going to look, but until you start recording, you don't really get some of those nuances. So day one of filming was really getting our reps in, getting some runs in, and really getting a lay of the land.
This will be on the screen that you're looking at, and there'll be a camera looking back at you.
Yeah.
So as you're walking, you can talk through it, and then we can loop it, and you can kind of say what they do right and wrong.
So when you're looking at that, let's say that's the TV screen, the camera's mounted where the C is, you're watching, and then you're gonna turn to the other one and say, all right guys, this is what I see here, blah, 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 and you can just do your thing. Day two, we tweaked the set a little bit, tweaked the lighting a little bit, and it flowed flawlessly. There was no cuts, it was smooth, straight to tape.
All right, these have been awesome. Let's see what the next question is.
I think you guys are gonna notice that a lot when you start watching this thing, that it's gonna keep getting better and better. That's the beauty of the show, that it'll evolve as the questions evolve, as the people evolve, as the opportunities evolve. You're gonna be seeing more and more people call in, and you're gonna also see Dom articulate things way more. Also, you'll see the studio continue to evolve. The background, the props, and the way that Dom interacts with those things. So this is only the beginning, and we're really excited where it's going to go.
Dom can talk about gear. Each episode he can talk about something of like moral or ethical depth. Each episode he can talk about a tactic or combative. That's like practical. And then each episode he can break down a scenario.
Yeah.
So that was sort of the strategy there.
You know, a lot of our formats are sit and chat formats. We also, with Borderland or Change Agents, have introduced the beginning, middle, and end, where we introduce the subject and go into it's more curated. This show is a lot different. This show is much more segmented. It has the opportunity for each segment to breathe, to evolve, to grow, and it's a format we're really looking forward to. This format is not the end with this podcast. We see dangerous questions for kids, we see dangerous questions for teens, we see it turning into a book. When it goes down, special episode series, you might be seeing something soon. All of these things are just the beginning and the foundation for a ton of evolution. This format really allows us to really grow.